Hello, everybody. My name is Lily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so happy that you are here. In today's video, I am going to show you how I add signatures to the little golden books. I am currently working on 3 of them, and in just a second, I will show you what all 3 look like. But today, I am going to focus on how I add the signatures. I typically just use 2 signatures in these little golden books. And I recently did a video showing you how I save that golden spine, and I will link the video up above right here so you can go and watch how I did that. And so this right here is iconic, so I don't get rid of it. I keep it as part of the journal. And so the next step is adding the signatures, and it has been highly requested that I show you my method, and it's pretty easy, pretty quick. And so if you would like to learn how I do it, then stick around and I will show you. And now, really quick, I'm showing you a finished journal. I am not doing a flip through of the finished journal. Today we're only focusing on the signatures. But if you are not subscribed and you would like to see what the flip through of these journals is, I will have that video coming up in the next few days. So subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the flip through of these 3 super cute little golden book junk journals. All right, you guys ready to get started so I can show you how I add the signatures? Let's go.
And this is a nice glimpse of the 3 little golden book junk journals that I'm currently working on. As you can see, I have already embellished the front covers. It is something that I enjoy doing, adding lots of dimension with paper florals, with metal embellishments. I've already added the metal book corners to all 3 books. And then the back, I leave as they are. It's just the front that I really focus on really embellishing. I had a couple of photo mats that I picked up at a thrift store a while ago. And then I added some rub-on transfers and then decorated with more paper flowers and then some butterfly ephemera. And then I also added the wide eyelets, and that will serve as part of the closure, and I'll thread some beautiful ribbon through that to keep the journal closed. And so it's my favorite part to be able to add these photo mats to the tops of these books. I know that there are mixed feelings about this, but this is the way I like to alter the junk journals. If you will be working on some of these, you can alter and leave as they are, or embellish as much as you like. I am going to briefly show you what the inside of the cover looks like. And in just a moment, I will also thumb through the pages I have selected for my 2 signatures. And just a reminder, I do have the video linked down below. So if you'd like to see how I get to this stage right here with saving that golden spine, I have left the inside of the junk journal as it is, or the little golden book. And so, especially when there is a name of who this belonged to, I leave that as it is. I think it adds a nice touch to see who this book once belonged to. I've already selected all of the pages that I'm going to use for my signatures. And this is where it's fun. And I like to go through the stash of scrapbooking papers that I have, as well as some vintage papers. I think I've selected ledger paper and a couple of other papers as well. If you have junk papers, those are also nice to use. And then I'm pointing out here that I did have to trim about 1/2 inch of the book pages so that they fit nicely within the cover of the book. And that was only 1/2 inch on that right-hand side of the book pages. And surprisingly, it didn't take away from the story. So the story is still there, and that 1/2 inch came right up to the storyline. But you know, even if I were to lose a few of the words from the storyline, I'm okay with it, because remember, I am altering these books. I am giving them a second life. A lot of these books I purchase at thrift stores, and some of them are really beat up, really aged, really weathered. And so now they get to have a second chance, and I've transformed them into something that can be used for many years. And I'm showing you here how how the pages, the scrapbooking pages coordinate with the storybook pages. That was pure happenstance. So the way I select pages is I thumb through the storyline to get an idea of the color theory or the color theme throughout the story pages. And then I go hunting through my scrapbooking papers and then I just put them together. But the way they coordinate sometimes surprises me because I really don't plan that. They just look so good when I put them all together. This is the center page. I use a 12 by 12 sheet of scrapbooking paper. I fold the bottom half up about 4 inches, and then I cut those inside pockets at an angle so that when you close them, they don't buckle and it closes nice and smooth, especially it being the center of the signature. And I really like how all of these papers just coordinated so well together. I'm going to bring in some of these supplies that I use to bind the signatures to the spine. I have chosen embroidery floss for today's binding, and then a large needle that has a large eye. This makes it super easy to thread through all of the pages. And then I also have a pokey tool to pierce through the signatures and the spine. And then I also have some templates that I have pre-made, and all depending on the size of my spine, I use the coordinating template. And so I have varying sizes. I try to work with spines that are between 1 inch and 2 inches. And so I have my templates ready to go. To create a template, depending on how many signatures you are going to use, you can take your strip of paper and then fold it evenly so you have your signature holes evenly spaced out on your template. For the what I'm going to use, I just take my strip of 1 inch paper, I fold it in half, and then I fold the ends in half. And that gives me the markings as to where I'm going to pierce my little template holes. And then I also fold in half vertically, and then again about 1 inch from the ends. And then once I unfold my little template, I'm left with like crosses at each fold. And that is where I take my pokey tool and then I poke through at those little intersections. And this one I had just created, and so I hadn't poked the little holes through. But that is how I create my templates. It's easier to have them ready depending on the size of your spine. Some little golden book spines vary in width. I've noticed that they can be anywhere between 1 inch and 1/16 of an inch. And so I have both ready to go. This is a 1 inch template, but you could see that my spine is just a tiny bit wider. And so I am going to grab the 1 1/16 of an inch template because that one is perfect. And they are also, you could see that both the 1 inch and the 1 1/16 of an inch are for 2 signatures. I like to work with 2 signatures. It is very rare that I add more than 2 signatures in a junk journal. Even my 2 inch spines will have 2 signatures. It is just my preferred number of signatures to work with. I've seen some amazing junk journals that will have 5 or 6 signatures. Way to go. I love it, but I like two, you guys. I either have the single signature junk journals or the 2 signature ones. So now I've placed my template on the inside of the spine, and to hold it in place, I have just taken 2 clips, and then with a pen, I am going to mark where those little holes are. The reason I clip it is so that it doesn't move. You don't have to use clips. If you have a steady hand and you can hold those in place, go right ahead. This is just what works for me. And once I've marked the little holes with my pen, I will then remove the clips, grab the piercing tool, and pierce the spine right where I made those pen marks. And you can see it's a very light marking that will be hidden once you poke your little holes through. Be careful when you do this because you want to make sure that you don't poke your fingers on the other end. So just be careful with that. And so hold it in a way that you can avoid piercing through your finger as well. You don't want that to happen. And then I kind of wiggle the little pokey tool around, and this makes it so that it creates just a slightly bigger opening. Not too much though. The reason I do this is to make sure that once I take my threaded needle through the signature and the spine, that it easily goes through those little holes. And it causes less strain on your fingertips. Because let me tell you, believe it or not, this is my least favorite part of making junk journals, and it is the binding part. And the reason being is if you don't make those little holes slightly bigger than your needle, it's just going to make it so hard to try to grab that needle and pull it through the spine. So make it just a little bit wider than your needle, okay? And it just makes it so much easier to thread everything through, and you won't have bruised fingertips, because there have been times where I will bruise my fingertips because I have squeezed that needle so hard to pull it through that it leaves little bruises. And have you ever had bruises on your fingertips? They kind of hurt for a little bit. So that is my tip to you. Make them just slightly bigger than the needle. I'm now going through my signatures, my signature pages, and I am adjusting them, making sure that they are all lined up and positioned exactly how I want them positioned. There are papers in varying sizes, but most of these are 6 inches, no, excuse me, 8 inches vertically and 6 inches horizontally. Most of them are, but there are a few offcuts that I've also included within the pages, and I want to make sure that those are centered within the signature. And now I'm just making sure that all of my pages will be neatly tucked in within the cover, making any final adjustments, and always double and triple check to make sure that your pages are all in the same direction and that they are lined up with the direction of your cover. I can't stress that enough because I have done it many times where my pages will be upside down and I've already attached them to the spine. So just double and triple check that. I'm now taking that same template and I am lining it up to the center of the signature. And notice how I lined up the first row of holes for the first signature, because I want to make sure that those holes line up to the holes I've already made on the spine. And so again, just lining it up to where that crease fold is, clipping it to the signature. And I'm not going to mark it with a pen. I'm going to go right ahead with my pokey tool and poke right through where the markings are. You could, if you want, take your pen and just mark where the holes are going to go and then remove the template and poke your holes. Either way works fine. I've done it both ways. Hold your, even though you have your papers clipped together, they may come apart. So get a good grip on your pages as you're piercing it through with the pokey tool, but just make sure that you are careful that you don't poke your hand or your fingers. And now I have pierced all 3 holes. I leave the clips in place to kind of keep the pages all in line. And then I don't remember what I'm doing here. I don't remember. Am I just showing you? I may just be showing you the pages of the second signature and also lining them up to make sure that they're all placed together. So you could see how I've used some of the offcuts. So I've taken a lot of 12 by 12 scrapbooking papers and I've cut them down so that when I fold them, they are 8 by 6. But then I'm left with a 4-inch by 12-inch strip of offcut, and I will also use those in my signatures. I'm not going to let that paper go to waste. And then even the ones that are left over, you'll see when I get to that flip through video in the next few days how I use the offcuts to embellish the pages. Okay, so now I'm going to make the markings for the second signature. And now I'm using the second set of holes on that template to pierce through the second signature because I want these to line up with the second set of signature holes that I've already done on the spine. I hope that makes sense. Because as close as the template holes are, they may vary just a little bit, and so I just want to make sure that they all line up. And again, I'm just going to pierce through the template. And I've had these, I've had these templates for quite some time. And I've just recently covered them with packaging tape so that they can last much longer. And that's why the other one, I hadn't poked the little holes through because I had just wrapped it in packaging tape. So if you like to work with different sizes of spines, this is a great way to have your templates ready to use. I'm going to choose a coordinating embroidery floss to thread through the signatures. I use different types of cords and threads when I do the signatures, when I bind the signatures. Embroidery floss is fun because you can get to choose coordinating colors. One of my favorites is the waxed linen thread. That is one of my favorite threads to use for binding, but I am out of that thread. I also like to use hemp cording, very thin hemp cording, and that also comes in different colors, so that's always fun to use. So use what you like, but you want to make sure that they are sturdy enough and will not easily tear. I'm using the embroidery floss and I'm leaving all the strands as it is. I think there are about 7 strands in the embroidery floss. Don't quote me on that, I don't remember, but I'm leaving all of those in place and threading it through the needle. It's a large needle, so it's super easy to thread through. I don't want to fuss with micro needles. And it would be impossible to try to use a small needle and pierce it through the spine. No, that would be too hard. So use a good sized needle that'll fit a nice sturdy cord or thread. And I'm going to do an easy 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It is the easiest method to bind your signatures. So I pierced it through the center and then inside the middle of the signature, out through the center of the spine, and now in through the bottom of the spine and through the signature. You want to be careful that you get all the pages of the signature. So kind of poke it through a little bit, make sure it comes through on all the pages, and then pull it. Pull it enough to where it is taut, but you don't want to lose the, I left a tail of embroidery floss at the very beginning. So I don't want to lose that tail. I want to make sure that it stays there in the center of the signature. And now I'm piercing it through the top of the signature and out the top of the spine. And now we're going to do the final threading back through the center. Make sure you don't lose your threads, that everything is still threaded through the needle. And this part is important. When you thread through that center once again, you want to make sure you do not split the thread. Don't split the thread. And what I mean by that is don't pierce your needle through the thread that was already stitched through that binding. And I'll explain more of that in just a second. And so even here, where you pierce through the center of the signature, again, you want to make sure that you don't pierce the thread. And I just did that. I pierced the thread. So I'm going to pull the needle back out a little bit. Oh, I know, I hope you can tell, but I'm pulling it out just enough because I had pierced through, I had split the thread. I don't want to split the thread. So I'm pulling it out just enough to where that thread is no longer split. And now I'm pulling it through all the way. Oh my gosh, I hope that made sense. The reason why you don't want to split the thread is when you are pulling taut like I'm doing right now, if you if you split the thread, it's going to be hard for you to pull the string or the thread taut because it's going to knot up in itself. And so just be careful not to split the thread. If you do, then remove it and start over again. And you don't want to start over again, so avoid splitting the thread. Pull it taut, but not tight because you don't want to tear the strings. And so I keep checking the back to make sure that they are not too loose. Because if you pull with enough force, you'll end up tearing the signature papers and also breaking your thread. So just give it a nice pull, nice and taut. And I'm going to knot the thread right in the center, and I have each end on opposites of that center thread. And I'm just going to tie a knot, just a simple knot around it. There is excess thread because I like to add beads dangling from the center. The length of your thread to bind the exact, so that you have enough thread when you're binding the signature, it is 3 times the length of your book vertically, 3 times the length. So if you're, well, these journals are 8 inches tall. And so 8 times 3 is 24. So I know that my string is going to be at least 24 inches in length, but I do extra so that I have enough tail at the very end to add little dangles and beads and things like that. So I'm now stitching in the second signature. I pierce through the second one right through the center. And now I'm going to come up through the bottom. And then pierce through the bottom of the signature. And again, just a little at a time to make sure that it all comes through in the center of the signature. And then that's when I pull. Notice the ease. It is so easy to pull that needle through the signatures and through the spine. And that's because I've made that pokey hole just a little bit bigger than the width of the needle. And it just makes it so much easier to pull it through. And then just pulling it taut, but making sure that that tail doesn't go all the way through. So I'm going to pull it out a little bit more because I tugged at it a little too much. And this is the part where you don't want to split the thread. And so I take a look inside that center to make sure that it pierced through, but without splitting the thread. And once I make sure that it's not split, I pull it all the way through. Oh, look, I did split it. And now I did split the thread. So I'm fixing it by going right back through it to make sure the strands are not intertwined. This way they don't get knotted up. So sometimes it's easy to remedy. Other times you have to pull it all the way out and start over again. Because believe me, if you split the thread, it will knot up and you won't be able to pull it taut. And it just turns into a knotted mess. And now I'm taking the tails on opposite ends of that center string, and I will now tie a simple knot. If you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know down below. But the best way to figure things out is to give it a try. And so if you've never done this before, practice makes better, okay? So give it a try. Do a simple 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Use whatever type of thread or cording that you like or whatever you have handy. And then practice. There are so many other styles of binding, but I find that this is the easiest and quickest way to put a signature together. And then just pulling that taut, tying the knots, and see how I have tails, and I'll be adding some pretty beads to that. And now the 2 signatures are in place. And there are about 20 pages total. I think it's 10 pages per signature. Somewhere between 16 and 20 pages total is what I have used. And so now I'm just going over, making sure that they are not loose, that they are nice up against the inside of the spine, and that they are all in the same direction. The worst thing is getting to this part and having your pages upside down. So double and triple check. I cannot stress that enough. For the sake of time, I have already bound the signatures to the other 2 little golden books. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comment section below. If you would like to share how you bind your signatures, please do so in the comment section. And this way, you and I can engage in conversation, but also everyone else that is watching can also learn from tips and tricks that you may have when it comes to binding. We can all engage and share our own processes. Giving you a top view of the journals and then showing you that beautiful golden spine. I love for the centers of the signatures to pop. So I try to use beautiful scrapbooking pages that will pop right in the center of each signature. I also like to create pockets like this using 12 by 12 paper. I love the way they look all grouped together, and that golden spine. Notice how the golden spine, the color, the gold kind of varies a little bit, but they are all just absolutely beautiful. And you can see how all of the strings are nice and taut. I'm going to flip the camera over in just a moment to say goodbye to you. You guys are awesome for sticking around and watching my process. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me throughout this video. I appreciate you so much. And I hope that you found this video helpful and that you will gather all of your supplies so that you can create your own junk journal. This was step 2. And don't forget that within the next few days, I will have the full flip through video of all 3 junk journals. This is just a sneak peek so you can see all the yummy goodness that's going on inside those junk journals. So subscribe if you have not subscribed, and I will see you here in the next few days. Bye.